Hello, legends. Boy, have I got a guest for you. Check this out. Don't come much braver than that, does it? Jumping out of a helicopter without a parachute. Let's go and meet Gary Connery. Gary, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, good. How are you, Chris? Nice to be here with you.
Mate, I watched that clip. God, what was it? I think you told me it was about 12 years ago now, wasn't it?
It was May the 23rd, 2012.
And I just thought, blimey. And mate, this is the beauty of life is did I ever think I'd be sat here with that guy? And not only that, folks, before we chat with Gary, I've just got to play you this. Who remembers the London Olympics, the James Bond scene? Let me just play you. I'll skip through this a bit, folks, but guess which guy stunt double for the Queen? Apologies, folks. I just had to skim through it because we'll definitely get hit for copyright on that one. But Gary, so great to meet you. I don't even know where to start, although I did make some notes. You were in the British Army.
I was in the parachute regiment officially for a little over 9 years, but honestly, I was AWOL for 2/3 of that. I was AWOL for 6 years.
Jumping out of planes, I'm guessing.
Well, there was a bit of that. I mean, look, the real reason the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of why I went AWOL was because I jumped off the Hilton Hotel dressed up as Father Christmas when we were on Christmas leave. And it made front page of the Daily Mail. And I'd obviously said to one of the reporters there, I don't remember saying it, but I must have said, hey, my army employers are going to love this one, because that's what got printed. And of course, when I got back to battalion after Christmas leave, I was immediately marched in front of the RSM and had a little bit of a confrontation with the RSM. And I was told I was going to be court-martialed for bringing the regiment into disrepute. And yet all I'd done was put smiles on people's faces, you know. And I joined the army for my reasons, Chris. I didn't join the army because I was some, I don't know, murderous gunslinger. I wanted to hone some skills so that I could get onto the stunt register. So yeah, you know, it was all a little bonkers for me that time of life.
I'll tell you what, mate. With a video I saw flying around the internet the other day, it's not you getting the paras into disrepute.
Oh, go on, tell me. I don't know. What have I missed?
Let's just say there's a certain young woman in Aldershot that's she doesn't hold back.
Okay.
And I think those boys, yeah, I think those boys will be hauled up in front of the CO. Yes. But no, that's the crazy thing, isn't it? Is they want you to go into conflict and commit pretty bloody hardcore acts, but doing a base jump and
Yeah.
you get in trouble for it.
absolutely. You know, and it was before Christmas. It made front page Daily Mail and all of page 3. It made people smile. It was a feel good story. And then all they want to do is knock you down for it. And yet, whilst I was AWOL, I had one of my mates that was still in, who'd become the CO's driver, get in touch with me and say, look, the CO is doing a chat in front of other regiments, COs, to mention and talk about how they, the parachute regiment, are able to retain their staff, you know, their the members of the regiment. And would I mind if he used some of my photographs and spoke about me? So it was so hypocritical, you know. Oh, this is the kind of guy we've got in the parachute regiment. But actually we don't like what he does. And he's gone AWOL as a result of the fact that we were going to court-martial him. It just didn't make any sense.
That's crazy. It's like the public expect you to be angels in the military. It's like, do you know what our job is? You know, it was what we have to do. It's yes. When you said you went AWOL, did you actually go AWOL for 2/3 of that time?
Yeah. I was AWOL for 6 years.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Was it fun?
I mean, that was back in the mid-90s as well, when, you know, I thought Big Brother at the time, because you don't know how big Big Brother is, you know, just getting pulled over for speeding, for example, and then having to produce your documents at the police station. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but I had to do that. And of course, at that time, I was really concerned. Oh my God, are they going to pick me up for being AWOL from the army? And they didn't, because all it was producing documents. Ultimately, the way I did get picked up, well, no, I didn't get picked up. I presented myself back to them. I was working on a film in Kefalonia, Captain Corelli's Mandolin, because I got into the stunt world. So I was working on a film and I recognized some guys that were out there working also. And what I didn't know was that these guys had come out from the parachute regiment to work as action extras on the film. Obviously, military guys knew what they were doing. There they were. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, Christ, I've 6 years now I've been AWOL. I'm 2,000 miles from home, doing the job I want to do, working in TV and film stunts. And I'm still looking over my shoulder. So when I got back, I got in touch with a mate who's a civvy solicitor. And I said, look, we've got to sort this out. So we wrote a letter to the parachute regiment, to the adjutant there, and said, look, come on, screw the nut here, let me go. And ultimately, I was administratively discharged within 2 weeks. So it was great.
And just reading off the internet here, Gary, you've so you're professional skydiver, base jumper, and stuntman. Worked in numerous films, stunt double for Gary Oldman, Leonardo DiCaprio, Rowan Atkinson, John Hurt. Yeah, that's quite a portfolio.
Yeah, I actually haven't doubled for Leonardo DiCaprio. They've got that wrong, but I was on the film The Beach, which was a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. I was doubling for the French guy, Guillaume Canet. And the classic stunt there was fantastic. I went to Thailand for 3 weeks just to get a suntan and jump off a waterfall. It was fantastic. So yeah, there's a scene where the 3 main characters in the film have to jump from a waterfall to get to the beach, and I was one of those.
Yes, one of my favourite ever books, especially as a global backpacker. And he's a nice bloke, that French guy. He's been in a few things.
Yeah, and he also directs now. Guillaume Canet, his name.
Yes. I think everyone that knows the beach knows the waterfall scene.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd love to have got to know better Virginie Ledouen as well, the girl in there. She was really quite cute.
Yeah, she was something else, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Did you see any active service, Gary?
No, I didn't, and I wouldn't have done. As I say, I joined for my reasons, and everybody joins for their reasons, but my reasons weren't, I want to go and fight. That's not about. I'd met someone, a guy called Julian Spencer, who was on the stunt register, and he had been in the parachute regiment, and I was struggling to earn money to gain the qualifications that I needed to get. And also looking at the criteria of what was required for stunts, I was condemning myself to another 3 or 4 years at my mum and dad's. And it's not where I wanted to be and at that time of life. And so I thought, well, I can sign up for three and a half years to the military and get these qualifications. Julian said to me, I got these qualifications in the military and I was being paid to do them. So for me, it was a no-brainer. So I joined up. But no, there was no way I was going to go active, and I wouldn't want to.
No. And is that where you obviously got your love for parachuting, or had you done that before you joined up?
I'd been dragged behind a boat with a parachute, parascending type of stuff. But no, the first time I jumped from an aircraft was in the military.
Yes, got you. Did you do the Bryce Norton course? I'm assuming you did.
I did, yes. So it's where you, for the listeners that don't know, there's a jump course that you do to get your military wings, and that consists of jumping from a cage suspended from a balloon that's tethered to the ground, so they can raise the balloon up and down in a controlled environment. So jump from the balloon, and then you go and jump from Hercules, is C-130 aircraft that we jump from. So, and then whilst I was there, I met a guy who was clearly a base jumper, one of the UK's very early base jumpers, because he had pictures all over his locker. And I said to him, "Oh, wow, you've got to take me base jumping." And he said, "Well, learn to fly a square canopy first, because the difference between military and sport jumping is generally the parachute. In military, you jump around canopy. Sport jumping, you jump a square canopy. And so they fly differently." So he said, "Go and learn to fly a square canopy first, and I'll take you base jumping." So I find myself then on Christmas leave, not the same Christmas leave as the Santa Claus jump, but the previous Christmas leave, I was out in Flagler in Florida doing my AFF course. 10 jumps later, I come home and then I go base jumping. So, yeah, it was a baptism of fire for sure.
Have you ever heard of Sebastian in Florida?
Yes.
Skydive Sebastian. Yeah, that's where I did my AFF.
Right. So, yeah, I guess fairly close to DeLand, where I sort of based myself for a little while thereafter. But, yeah, I did mine in Flagler, which is right on the coast.
And what the longevity definitely of wingsuit jumpers seems pretty bloody limited. And,
yeah.
And a fair few base jumpers have creamed in. Skydiving, obviously, statistically pretty safe, although I did see some there have been a few mishaps there. Yeah, how do you manage all that? And I'm guessing you probably lost a lot of friends, Gary, haven't you?
I have. There's been a lot of people I've known that have what we call gone in. So in other words, hit the ground. Yeah, I mean, look, there was a time when wingsuits made base jumping safer. And that was when people would fly away from the structure that they've just jumped from, and then open in clear space. It was like a skydive, really. And yes, you're right. Skydiving statistically is very, very safe still, and very few people on wingsuits in skydiving go in. But then in 2006, with the whole base jumping thing, there was a guy called Loic Albert, a French guy, who posted on YouTube what I would say was the first sort of proximity flight. And all of a sudden, everything changed. And the wingsuits and the base jumping equipment, that's not a problem. It's the people using them. There became this whole YouTube culture of clicks and likes and comments. And, when I started, YouTube didn't even exist. You know, you couldn't even send an email when I started base jumping. So yeah, I was never part of that culture personally. And it's really quite frightening when you're up on the edge of a cliff and you come across these kids that have never jumped, never skydived, never base jumped, but they're up with gear that they don't really know how to use. They've learned how to pack by watching YouTube videos, and they're prepared to chuck themselves off a cliff so that they can film it and show their mates. So each to their own. I don't have a problem with that, but and I think, you know, all power to you for having the balls to do it. But at the same time, I don't want the sport that I have a passion for to get a bad name because people are becoming squishy in someone else's back garden. You know, it's not a good advertisement for the sport.
Are you familiar with Travis Pastrana?
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love watching. What was it? Nitro Circus, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember watching him jump out of a plane without a parachute, and that's a pretty brave thing. And then his buddy, what his buddy did, come down on top of him, and obviously he had a harness under his shorts.
Exactly.
Clipped into him, and then, but it's just that thing. You gotta trust that buddy. Jeez.
Yeah, I've done something sort of similar, but I always had my own get out, but I didn't use the get out. So got in an aircraft, blindfolded, had no idea what altitude we went to, jumped out, and I was relying on my mate to deploy my parachute. And the idea being was that I don't lift up the blindfold and I don't deploy my own parachute. So the knowledge of time you've been in the air when one of your senses is taken away becomes very skewed. But sure enough, my mate came in, deployed my parachute for me. You know, it's just things you get involved with just to get your awarenesses heightened and change things a little bit, you know, change it up.
I watched Travis Pastrana's dad, who's just as mental as Travis. He's ex-Marine, and he gets up on, he's never done a base jump before. I don't even know if he skydived, to be honest. I don't think he had. They just whacked a chute on him. He got up on a parapet, and not only did he jump, but he done is it a gainer when you do a forward flip?
Right. A gainer is a back somersault. Yeah, but forward somersault. Yeah, for sure.
Forward somersault.
Was that bridge? Was it?
Yeah, it was off a bridge. You know, they used to do a lot. I've seen Travis doing that thing where you drop the parachute down, it's already open, it's hanging down, and then you kind of forward flip into it. Is it something like that?
Yeah, it's called a roll.
Yeah. But that guy, I think Travis can hardly walk now. I mean, he's broken his legs so many times.
Yeah, he's certainly pushed the limits, and again, all power to him. What an inspiration for people. But he's done it properly. He was doing back somersaults into foam pits. He would learn how to do it. He would have very padded down ramps for his motorcycle. You know, like the Nitro Circus. When you go there, it's a very padded, thought out environment. He's not what I would call one of those YouTube cultures that I mentioned before.
Is it frightening doing your first base jump, or is it a bit like the balloon jump?
I would say it's more frightening doing your second one, because then you know what's coming. The first time you do it, yeah, for sure. Look, all your senses are telling you don't do this, but it's not then until you land and you realize that you've overcome your fears and the euphoria that you feel as a result of overcoming your fears, then you go, right, now I know why I'm doing this. And yeah, I think honestly, knowledge dispels fear. So the more you do something and the more familiar you become with it, and the more information you have about that particular experience, in a way, the less fear you feel, the more nonchalant people seem to become with it. And that's a double-edged sword. If you're nonchalant, you can make mistakes. But at the same time, you can do it with more confidence. And, you know, like, for example, people start doing gainers and aerials and different maneuvers. That only comes with knowledge, unless you're Travis Pastrana's dad, of course.
Yes, crazy. What have been your near misses, Gary, over the years?
So I messed up on the Eiffel Tower, and that was purely an ego thing. I was still very young in the sport. I just got myself onto the UK stunt register, and I thought, hey, I can make a splash here. I'm going to go out, jump the Eiffel Tower. I had a writer for the national press, and I had a photographer who had won World Sport Photography Awards. And I thought, this is fantastic. I'm going to make a splash in the stunt world. Hey, Gary Connery's arrived. What I did was made a splat in the stunt world. And I ended up in intensive care for 7 days in Paris. It should have been longer, but I had to discharge myself. I had to get out of there.
What's worse, being in intensive care or being in Paris?
Do you know what? I like the French. I love their attitude. You know, I've spent, you know, it's a good amount of time in France because I used to ski race, and I based myself in France for 5 seasons. So I actually love the French attitude. For example, when they don't like something that the government have implemented, they just shut down the road arteries. They get the truckers out on the roads and they go, no, we're shutting this down, and change your minds, change your policies. And I think that's brilliant. I think we lack in this country. And I wish we had that kind of movement in this country. I wish the minions had the power to speak. But unfortunately, we don't.
So, Gary, yes, beautiful country, France, beautiful people. Just joking. I lost my train of thought. And yes, we have got a little bit of movement with our farmers, but certainly we're, you know, I think people, it would be great if people in this country woke up a bit to see just how oppressed we are. But I guess if you didn't figure that out in the last 3 years, you're probably never going to. What I wanted to ask, yeah, that was it. How did you cream in at the Eiffel Tower? What happened?
So, as I say, it was an ego trip. The winds were too strong, and I knew that. But at the same time, I knew that this was a one-hit opportunity. The guys that I'd gone down with, the writer and the photographer, they'd paid for the tickets. My girlfriend, wife-to-be, ex-wife-to-be was with me. And it was, I either jump or I don't. And it was gusting to probably about 40 miles an hour. It was snowing. It was cold. And I jumped from the first level. I'd done a whole recce of everywhere a while before, as in a few weeks before. And I couldn't get out of the encaged area at the top. So I jumped from the first level, and it's about 160 feet off the ground. You've got the 4 legs coming up and the gallery around the outside, and there's a hole through the middle. And I jumped through that. And any of your listeners who jump will know that ideally any aircraft lands into wind, and it slows everything down. So planes coming in, they'll always do their best to land into wind. And it's the same with parachutes. You land into wind. I jumped having to have the wind on my back because I needed it to take me away from the metalwork that I'd just jumped from. And then as I started to turn to face into wind, I realized that I wasn't going to make it round because of the strength of the wind. So ultimately, I had to do what's called a downwind landing. And so I had forward speed of the canopy plus wind speed. And all I remember was 2 lampposts going this way on my left side really quickly. And then I impacted the ground, but I don't remember that part of it. Apparently, the canopy stayed inflated. I hit the ground, it dragged me across a road, and I impacted all my right side on a curbstone, and then it picked me up and smashed me into a metal fence. So I was a bit damaged, and off I went to intensive care. But I've got, I'm giving away a bunch of stories here. I've actually written a book that's not yet available, but a whole bunch of these stories are in that book, and I go into more detail in there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yes, I had a few mishaps. What was it? You just reminded me of something then. Yeah, on my jumps course in the military, I remember coming into landing wind and idiot me, I pulled down on the wrong lift webs, didn't I? And the
Yeah.
PJI screaming through his megaphone, "Number 7, pull down on the back lift webs." See, I'm pulling on the front. I'm going even faster with the wind. I'm talking to friends at home here now, obviously. And I'm going along thinking, who's this number 7 idiot? What a prat. Pull down on the back lift webs, mate. And as I saw the ground coming at me at such speed, and I was flying along horizontally, I thought, I'm number 7. I hit so hard and knocked myself unconscious. No, I didn't
Yeah.
knock myself out, but I knocked myself. I banged my head to that point where you're like, oh, that's a bit hard. And
And then you learned you were number 7.
yes. And on my skydiving course, for some reason, I had a German instructor, and he was afraid to teach me that when you're coming into land, which you, as you said, you always try to do into the wind, if you start to veer off, he didn't teach me that you can pull down. Is it to shoulder height on the lift on I don't know. I can't remember what you call them on a square canopy, but the
On the
steering
right.
steering toggle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Riser. Yeah. He. So anyway, I did the first week of the course absolutely brilliant. I did about 30 jumps in all once I'd done the required 12 or whatever it is, or was it 9 or something. And I'm going out the plane. I'm just doing backflips all the time, absolutely loving it. But then I started to notice the second week it got windy, and as I'm coming towards the landing zone, the wind's starting to take me, and the canopy's turning, and then suddenly I'm full on with the wind and it's blowing me that way. Of course, I'm trying to flare, and it's not, it's slowing me down a bit, but I'm just creaming in really hard. And then I got dragged across the airfield, and one of the other skydivers said, "Why didn't you steer?" I said, "What are you on about?" I said, "My instructor said never steer near the ground." And so I said to the instructor, I said, "They're telling me that I should have just steered." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't want to teach you that, because the only accident we've had at this airfield was someone steering too close to the ground and losing too much air from the canopy." I'm fascinated to ask Gary, what should I have done? What should he have taught me?
So, right, really interesting subject, I guess. Most fatalities in skydiving happen to experienced jumpers who are already under a good canopy. And that's from, again, ego, a bit of showing off, doing what's called low hook turns close to the ground and then swooping and surfing in along the ground. Now, it looks really cool. It sounds fantastic. It's high speed. To the viewer on the ground, brilliant. And it's amazing watching people who can do that well doing it. It's incredible to watch. I don't do it. If you get it wrong, you impact the ground really, really hard, because you were talking about your lift webs and what you were pulling on when you were in your military. Similarly, with your steering toggles and your risers, what you're doing is essentially deforming the shape of the canopy. So if this is my canopy and I'm flying this way, that's the way it flies. If I deflate one side to make a turn, all of a sudden the air's spilling out and you go into a dive. So you're gaining speed towards the ground quickly. And if you don't pull out of that quick enough, you impact. So there is an argument for not steering close to the ground. I get that. But as a beginner, you're going to be on a very big docile canopy.
Yes.
And yes, it would have started to turn slowly. And I suppose the more the wind gets behind it, the more then it would have speeded up and then you'd have been downwind. But yeah, if you'd had small inputs at that point, when you're lined up and you're looking and all of a sudden, oh, look, it's going slightly this way, small inputs would have brought you back round and you'd have been fine. But I do understand why he didn't want to tell you to put in big inputs close to the ground. I get that.
Yeah. He didn't even tell me to put any inputs in. So that was that was the thing. Who's been the best celebrity that, or actor or actress that you've worked with?
Oh, well, there's a question. There's been a few. I got on really well with Daniel Day-Lewis. He was a top dude. I got on really well with Matt Smith, who played Doctor Who. So I was on Matt Smith's very first job. I don't know what age he was, but straight away you look at someone and watch them doing their piece on camera and you go, wow, he's good. And I connected really nicely with him. And ultimately, when he became Doctor Who, I got him to send a couple of cards to the daughter of a friend of mine who was mad about Doctor Who. He'd come into a cafe that myself and my wife owned at the time. And he said, oh, can you sort out these cakes with these pictures on top, Doctor Who stuff? And I said, yeah, sure. I said, do you want me to get her a card from Doctor Who? And he's looked at me as if to say, can you really do that? So Matt was great. He was very, very humble with that and sent her a couple of lovely cards. I mean, look, there's a whole bunch that are great and there's a few that are not so great, but we'll leave that.
So when you're coming into land on the wingsuit jump where you're not going to deploy the parachute, you've got all these cardboard boxes stacked up to land on. You gotta hit the cross. I'm guessing we called it when I got my pilot's license. We called it hitting the numbers. That's when you come into the airfield and you've got the degrees written out at the end. So it's usually 90 or 180 or something written out at the very beginning of the tarmac. We used to call it hitting the numbers if you could get your wheels on that. And I'm guessing for you were aiming for that first third of the cardboard boxes, would it have been?
I actually wanted to go into the middle. And I ended up 8 feet over my preferred spot, if you like. So
yeah, I wouldn't have done that, Gary. I would have just hit the middle.
Yeah, but then I didn't want. Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Okay, well done. Well, look, we can go and set it up, and you can have a crack at it if you want.
I've got to nip to Tesco's this afternoon, mate. But any other day, yeah, I would have done. Yeah.
Have you got a club card?
Mate, I'm too disorganised to carry those bloody cards. They always ask me. I'm like, no, I'll just pay whatever it is.
Look, no, it's on your phone now. You have it on your phone.
I know. Isn't it awful?
Listen to us, a couple of old blokes, ex-paras, talking about Tesco's club card.
Mate, I want to get back to the bloody. I want to get back to the 70s without all the child abusers.
Oh, they were there. It's just that the internet wasn't, so we didn't know about it.
Yes, of course. No, that's what I mean. I like the 70s. I didn't like the child abuse.
Right.
Because it was, friends, for our young people watching, it was very normal, and this child abuse was rife, and it was kicked under the carpet, and everyone turned a blind eye to it, and it's no wonder we all ended up a bit screwed up.
Yeah. I don't know how all of a sudden we got to that, but yeah.
Yes, that's the beauty of podcasts. Am I right, Gary, in thinking on your approach, on your flight path, as it were, had you decided, I'm a little bit long or I'm too short, with the wingsuit, you can deploy the parachute quite low, can you not?
Yes, but there is obviously a point at which one goes too low. And the reason the box rig was the size that it was because when I was back and coming down below 150 feet, which probably would have been around the sort of cutoff mark for deploying, I wanted to know that I was going to hit that box rig. You know, like you say, hit the numbers on the runway. I call that sight picture. And I'm sure you've come across that before. Your sight picture is such, you know, you might pick a little dot on your screen and see that that dot is staying on the numbers. So you know that you're coming in at that right glide angle. Well, for me, it was kind of the same, albeit on the day itself, because of the wind conditions, we pulled the spot forward, the spot of the helicopter where I jumped from, which meant my angle of attack was steeper than I'd ever gone before. And so when you watch the video, you can actually see me sort of wiggling around all over the place because the airflow was something I wasn't used to. All of my training had been about trying to find this really super soft position that I could maintain and just descend. But of course, that soft position was only good in zero wind. The fact that I had a headwind and now I had to dive, I was all over the place. And it's not until the last, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 seconds of that wingsuit flight that all of a sudden I go from this and then I just hit my position. And then I came in because at that point I knew I was going to impact into the boxes and I was in good shape. So, but until that point, I was all over the place.
How many pints had you drunk to come up with that idea?
No, I've never really been a drinker, to be honest with you. So I knew. So this goes into stuff that is all about my past, all about my desire to achieve something, to be the best at something. When I was a kid, I kayaked to a good standard, and I had this naive idea. It was naive. I realize that now, but I didn't realize it at the time. I was going to be the best kayaker in the world. But then I had to give that up because of lack of money. My folks worked really, really hard and I love them dearly, but they just didn't have, you know, disposable income. So I couldn't go and do the events that would have advanced my kayaking career. Then I got into skiing and I was going to be the best ski racer in the world. And that was naive and I had to give up because of lack of money. And so I had this desire to be the best at something. And don't get me wrong, I've never been the best wingsuit pilot and I never will be. But when the opportunity and the holy grail of the skydiving world through wingsuiting suddenly became someone's going to land one of these, straight away, I already knew how to do it. I'd never even flown a wingsuit, but I knew how to do it. And so, and I knew how to do it because of my stunt background and hitting boxes. I thought, well, you know, if you can fly a wingsuit at 60 miles an hour, it's no different to jumping off a building at 80 feet. You're just impacting and that's it. The boxes do the work. So it was just then about following that path. And so I went and did some wingsuit flying, but I think I only did 7 or 8 jumps out in Florida. No, sorry, it wasn't Florida. It was LA. I went to LA, did 7 or 8 jumps. And yes, I confirmed as soon as I got out of the aircraft and I was flying, it was like, right, confirmation, boxes are going to work. And then it was just about bringing it, you know, closer and closer to the ground. So for 7 or 8 years, I then didn't do any wingsuit flying and pretty much next to no skydiving either. Because what I wanted to do, I was trying to get the backing of a production company to show how someone goes from 0 to hero in 6 months, no wingsuit experience, to landing a wingsuit. And it just didn't happen. I really struggled because people loved the idea, but they thought there's no way we're getting involved because we don't want you killing yourself on our watch. And so ultimately someone did then put in some money. I won't go into detail. This is all going to be in the book. People did put in money, but then that money got sucked up in them researching what cameras are we going to use and how should we do this and how should we do that. I was 2 days from going to America to start the project, and I got a phone call saying, Gary, you can't go, we've run out of money. What? That was my money. Where's that money gone? So project on in my head. So I just funded it myself. And I thought, well, there's no, so I really had to cut corners, not cutting corners that compromise my safety, because obviously I'm here talking to you now and everything went fantastically well. But it didn't end up being the production that I thought it would be. But it ended up being that quintessential, you know what, let's do it UK style in a cow field, just outside Henley-on-Thames, that quintessential, beautiful spring day. And it happened, and it was fantastic.
I was going to say, what was your feeling when you knew you'd landed successfully, and what was all your loved ones and your spectators? What was going through their minds?
Yeah, well, I can't answer for them. I can only answer for myself. But I knew that I'd landed before I landed. I knew boxes worked. And I knew at that point where I was saying I went from this to suddenly that and just gliding in, I knew I'd landed, and I was physically laughing in my helmet before I impacted because the boxes work. And there was a big cheer before I impacted from the crowd that were there, all of the fantastic people that had come and helped me build the box rig and make my dream come true. You know, I wouldn't have done it without them. So all power to them. Thank you very much once again. My emotions were just overwhelming, and it's not something that one can really describe. You know, imagine wanting to have achieved something, not done it in kayaking, not done it in skiing, but all of a sudden this opportunity, knowing there was a bit of a race on around the world and other people were talking about the idea of landing, but who was actually going to do it? And yeah, then having that, I spoke before about facing your fears and that feeling of euphoria. I didn't really have fears of this one because I'd done the required training. I knew I could achieve it. But the euphoria of having ticked that box of, all right, I'm not the best in the world, never will be, but I'm now the guy that did that. And I achieved it. And for me, that's a huge life moment. And I can now, to some extent, put that side of my life to one side. Having said that, Chris, I do have a stunt, and it's out there at the moment, and hopefully people are going to come back and go, yeah, we'll do that. I'll tell you what it is. I've called it Shooting Star. Now, what to humans is a shooting star? We only really see it the way that film have portrayed it. So imagine a meteorite coming into the Earth's atmosphere. It's burning up. It's flames through the night sky. It impacts on the ground and it scorches the ground. So imagine me flying a wingsuit, dusk, dawn, whatever, but that moody kind of light. Suddenly I become on fire. So now I'm flying a wingsuit on fire. I impact in boxes. They're all primed to go on impact. Boom, I hit the boxes, they burst into flames. So that stunt's out there at the moment. So if any of your listeners want to help me get that done, it's available. And I know exactly how.
How are you going to get your Zippo out while you're flying along?
Top secret.
So that was legendary. But you was also the Queen. How was that?
Well, do you know what? It was only to do with the bum and legs. You know, I had to go for a line-up, and the Queen picked which one she liked to be her bum and legs. And of course, I looked good in a peach salmon dress. I mean, but days in the parachute regiment teach you that.
There you go. Friends at home, we're obviously talking about the London Olympics, in which Gary stunt doubled for the Queen when she jumped in with Daniel Craig, wasn't it? James Bond. Who doubled for him?
So yeah, that was a good friend of mine, Mark Sutton, who had been on my wingsuit project with me. So I met Mark in May of 2011. He was a banker, but he was having a bit of a sabbatical and going
Hey, mate,
around
we
the
all make mistakes.
yeah.
I thought that was Cockney rhyming slang or something.
Say not rhyming slang. Yeah, brilliant.
I bet he's heard that so many times he's fed up with it. Sorry, go on.
So yeah, he was on this sabbatical, but I met him at a known base jumping and wingsuit flying site in Italy, Monte Brento. And we really connected, and we were on a trip together later in the year in September. And I'd confirmed for myself on that trip that I absolutely can land this wingsuit. As I said before, I knew how to do it a long time before, but I hadn't actually really flown to the same point, proximity flying, as in being close to terrain. I hadn't done that over and over again to the same point at all. But on this trip, that's what I was doing. And in my head, I'm thinking, if those trees that I've just been buzzing over the top of time and time again, if they were my box rig, I'd just hit the box rig every time, confidently. So I said to him on the drive back, I said, hey, Mark, what are you up to for the next few months? He said, I don't know. Why? I said, I'm going to land a wingsuit. And from that point, it was game on, and he became project manager. You know, the money that had been sucked up had been sucked up a year or so ago. But I still had it in my head that for me, it was game on and I had to do it. But I still had to do that training that I hadn't gone to do. I still had to go and do it. And so this was part of that training, but I hadn't told anybody else about it. Mark was the first one to know.
Yeah, we should thank Mark, shouldn't we? Mark Sutton, because we've been playing some of his wonderful footage.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, we lost Mark a year and a month or so after his famous James Bond jump. He was flying a wingsuit so he took off in a helicopter from Chamonix and flew a wingsuit down a ridge line and ended up being one of those ones that we lost through impact. So yeah, love him. He's such a great guy. And there is a film out, actually. There's a film that if you can look it up, it's on Vimeo, and it's called The Man Who Flew to Earth. And that was put together by a friend of mine, Roy Taylor, who's a stunt guy, but he's also got his own production company, Sugar Glass Productions. And he's put together this film. It's a little over an hour, but it tells the story of the wingsuit landing, and Mark features in that quite a lot.
Yes, commiserations. But it's that thing, isn't it? People will say it better to live as a lion for one day than a coward for your whole life.
Yeah, something along those lines, Chris.
Yes,
yeah, I think.
Yes. Gary, did you get to meet Daniel Craig?
No, albeit I have met him. I worked on the film Layer Cake.
Ah.
That was before he was Bond.
That was like his debut film, wasn't it? Where he got noticed, I mean.
Honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't tell you, Chris. I don't know when when his career sort of began and took off. But yeah, I mean, I love the film Layer Cake. Unfortunately, you can't watch it again without knowing how it ends. It's one of those films, isn't it? Some films you can watch over and over again and keep seeing stuff, and it's great, and it doesn't really matter about the ending as such. But with that one, you start and you love the film, and it's shot well and beautiful, and it's great storyline and great characters, but you know how it ends, and you can't get away from that.
You're making me feel bad now, mate, because I've got no memory. I've watched that film a couple of times. I couldn't even. If you'd offered me £1 million, I couldn't tell you how it ends. That's
okay,
yeah.
All right. I wonder if you get part way in and then realise and go, oh yeah, pointless watching this now.
Yes, because I was watching the thing, and I was getting that false memory syndrome, false memory recall, because I could have sworn you landed in the stadium. But then, of
Right.
course, you couldn't do, because you're supposed to be the Queen who walks in, who then walks in. The Queen actually walked into the stadium, didn't she?
Yeah. So they were originally, it was going to be land in the stadium, and they were going to have some sort of doorway that I would then walk into, and then the story would sort of unfold in people's minds of, oh, she's gone up this conveyor belt or stairway or whatever, and then pops out at the top, the same as she did anyway. But yeah, ultimately, because there was two jumpers and all of the cableways and all of the mess that is above the stadium, like a spider's web of wires and cable cams and wires for suspending speakers and such like. There was a lot of mess to actually get through to land in the stadium. So we jumped, spiraled around a little bit, showed the crowd, and obviously the cameras for the world live transmission. But then we just landed just outside the stadium. And then, yes, the Queen was shown to walk in.
Did you get a thank you from the Queen?
No.
Yeah, I never get them either.
No, and she didn't even invite me to one of her tea parties. I mean, I'm gutted. I never met the Queen, and I wished I had. You know.
I don't think we're going to now, mate, are we? not in this lifetime.
Well, yeah, exactly. Maybe when we both disappear, because none of us get out of here alive, do we?
So tell us about your book. What stage are you at with it?
So it's about 82,000 words or thereabouts.
Nice.
And I don't know anything to most people in terms of numbers of words in a book.
Well, typical book used to be 120,000, but everything's getting shorter attention spans, warehouse space and rental and all this sort of stuff. So they, books, I don't think they mind them if they're 80. Well, I mean, 80,000 is plenty enough for a book. I think my last memoir was about 80,000, whereas my first memoir was 240,000.
Oh, crikey! And what was that published? That one, 240,000.
No, I opted to edit it down myself. Hang on, I'll put the books on the screen here. So, Eating Smoke, I edited down myself to 160,000. That was just the learning process of becoming a writer. Yeah. I could see it needed stripping down. And then it got published at 160,000 by a mainstream publisher. I then got a second publisher who had different rights, and they wanted the golden 120,000. So I said, look, do you mind if I edit it? Because I didn't want someone doing a hatchet job on it. And I managed to get rid of 40,000 words without losing any of the book. All I did is I looked at sentence structure. I thought, there's 20 words in that sentence. There only needs to be 6.
Yeah, yeah.
I took out a lot of dialogue tags. So he said, she said, when it was blatantly obvious who was, speaking. So sorry that you, and how far from completion of the actual manuscript?
So in my head, it's done, because the stories. So the way it came about, Chris, was, when I'm talking to friends or like yourself, all of a sudden I start talking about, the time I jumped off the Hilton Hotel, or the time I rode a BMX bike off Beachy Head, or I jumped off Eiffel Tower. And, you realize that one story kind of bleeds into another, and people generally ask the same questions. And so my answers had become very scripted. And then people say, "Oh, Christ, you should write a book about this." And I just thought, well, okay. And I didn't write a book, I spoke a book. So when I do text messages or emails or whatever, the little button that I've got, I don't know what it's like on other phones, but I've got an iPhone, and you can hit a button which looks like a microphone, and you can talk to the phone and it types it out. So that's how I did my book. So when I was traveling to and from work, in the car for hours on end. I'd hit the button and I'd just talk. I imagined someone asking me the questions that people ask over and over again, those same questions. I got the majority of it down, and then I would reread it and go, oh, actually, I can add a bit here, and I can add a bit there, and I can edit this, and I can change that and put that there. And all of a sudden, I've got probably my 10 top stories down. And then it was just a case of tweaking it. So what stage is it at? It's at its second edit stage. And my editor, unlike what you said about, you know, you didn't want them taking stuff out that you wanted in there, and it was quite specific for you. My stories can't really be edited because they are what they are. The edit process is really about, should it be a colon here, or should that part be in italics, or should there be speech marks? And, you know, it's more a punctuation type exercise than an actual changing it exercise. Yes, as you said about rewriting sentences, if there's too much jargon in there, that's been done, and that's really helped actually make it flow better. But I've had it back after its second proper edit. I'm now doing my edit of their edit, as it were, and then it will go back. So then we're going to look at, okay, what's the cover going to look like? What's the words going to be on the back of the book? So it's pretty close. But then I've got this elephant in the room I'm not going to talk about, which then I've got this timeline conundrum of when do I let that go? But you know what, like you said about your focus is, what was the word you said? What you focus on is where your flow goes, or something.
Yeah. So where your focus goes, the energy flows, which is why for me, the past doesn't exist. Like literally all I've taken is the good stuff.
Yeah.
Leave everything else behind.
So I completely get that. And I agree with you. And this book is all about feel good stuff. And so I'm wanting to push that out there and hope that people buy it. Its title is The Day I Became Queen. So obviously the Olympics is a chapter in there. Yeah, but you also said something else about the amount of words, and it reminded me of something that Winston Churchill said. And it was great, and it's so true. I'm sorry I've written you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. It's brilliant. And it's so true. You know, we use so many words to say so much because we don't really know what we want to say, and we're blurting it all out. And when you actually think about it, you can narrow it right down. Yes.
It's identical to editing video. I've just edited a video for our cross-Atlantic row. Friends at home, I'm rowing across the Atlantic in December with a bunch of former fighting men, all of us recovered from chronic trauma. And we're going to shine a light for struggling veterans out there, that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, we went out on our boat for the first time the other day, took loads of footage. And of course, an hour's worth of footage, you're only looking for 5 or 6 minutes from it. Anymore, you know, who wants to watch an hour of fluff, especially in this day and age? Like I say, attention spans getting shorter, and it really is that. And there's another thing as well, Gary, is the reader or the viewer or the watcher, they're not going to miss something that they didn't even know was in there in the first place, right?
Yeah, sure. So, let's stay with you for a minute, because I'm really intrigued and interested about this row across the Atlantic. Where's your start point? Where's your finish point? How many of you are there? What's going to be your arrangement? How many hours on? How many people are going to be on the oars at one time? You know, what's your setup? What are you doing?
Oh, brilliant. I love it when a guest asks me some stuff. A lot of people are old school with watching video, Gary. They think that a podcast is an interview. And you get a lot of the old school kind of BBC type guests. They sit there and they get really shocked when you start talking. and I always say, no, it's a podcast. It's a chat between two oppos. So yeah, the Atlantic row came about. I've loved reading seagoing stories. I've just loved it all. You know, round the world, yachtsman, rafters, Tor Heyerdahl, Stephen Callahan, was it 76 Days in a Life Raft, all that kind of thing. And and we've had a few rowing boat crews on the podcast. One of which, good friend of mine called Brucey, former fellow Marine, he's part of a company called Mission Atlantic, and they help veterans access these boats. So you get them at a really, they're not cheap by any means, but you know they work it so that you're not spending £100,000 on a boat basically. So that's that. I've recruited two wonderful chaps. Sean, also former Marine, Chrissy, British Army. We're still looking for one more, folks. If you're an enlightened veteran, you might want to get in touch if you don't mind fundraising. We're not interested in your rowing skills because we're not at that stage yet. And yeah, we're going to set sail in a rowing boat, if that makes sense, from Gran Canaria in December. We're going to row across to Barbados. Should take us between 35 days and 2 months, depending on conditions, I suppose. And
whether you've had your Weetabix.
Yes. Yes, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I eat anything, so I'm not really too bothered in that department. Does that answer your question, Gary?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, how many of you are in? So, is a crew of 5? Is it?
It's 3 of us at the moment, and Oh yes, I remember what you asked me. So we're looking for one more person because it's 2 hours on, 2 hours off for 2 rowers. So 2 row while 2 get their heads down, or chat or listen to music or make food or whatever it is, whilst 2 row. And obviously you can be flexible with that. We're thinking of sort of rotating in a 4-hour shift on the oars so that someone can go and get 4 hours sleep. Isn't too bad, really, is it? It's 2 hours is like doing guard duty. It's just that annoying not enough.
2 hours is tough because it's going to, once you come off your shift on the oar, it's going to be 20 minutes before you're asleep, minimum probably, and an hour and 40 minutes later you're getting kicked in the head to wake up and get back on the paddle again. So I've got a friend I'm sure you've spoken to other people and other crews that have done this, but does the name Aldo Kane mean anything to you?
Yes, fellow Marine.
Right. Well, he's a mate of mine. I mean, if you want to have a chat and see how they did it, because I think they smashed a record. I think they came the other way. They came, west to east.
Yes, I've known a few. I've known quite a few veterans now that have done it. I probably know people that was in Aldo's boat, but it all gets confusing because they've all got the same. They're all like Atlantic Mission Dagger, Atlantic Dagger. It's, yes. Folks, there'll be a link probably below in the description box. If you can spare us a £5, we're going to be supporting a charity that rehouses homeless veterans and also supports the welfare of bereaved service kids. And let's not mince words. Bereaved in this day and age means suicide, folks. So it's the elephant in the room in the veterans community. So if you can bung us a £5 to support these kids, that'll be absolutely brilliant. Gary, listen, that just leaves me to thank you. When do you think the book will be out? We can't put a link for it, obviously.
Yeah, good question. truth is, I don't know, but I can certainly let you know, and I'd love to come back and talk to you again. You know, maybe we can touch on some other subjects. And yeah, I mean, look, thanks for having me. It's been a blast, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. You've got a YouTube channel. I'll put the link below so people can find it. Do you want people to follow you on social media, or is that not your thing?
I mean, look, it would be great because I've got this stuff coming. I've got the elephant in the room stuff coming because I'm working on a process. I've got the book coming. I don't really do Instagram. I don't really look at Facebook. People are telling me I should. Let's talk again and then work out where we go from there, because I'm just not at that stage yet where I've got everything in play. So it's not as though I can say, hey, yeah, follow me here, follow me there. But in the future, the not too distant future, that will be the case.
Absolutely. Gary, listen, just stay on the call because I'm going to play us out. But just absolutely thank you so much for coming on the show. Massive congratulations on all your achievements. Genuinely, I know you've been through a lot, and I hope there's a bright, well, I know there's a bright future out there for you.
Hey, life is bright. We live in the moment, don't we? You know, yes, I've been through trauma like all of us, but you know, I suppose if I can leave this thought with your listeners is think about the moment. How are you right here, right now? And at the moment, I'm talking to a mate. I've got food in my belly. I'm warm. I've got people who love me, and I love people, you know, so if it's only when we think of the bigger picture and go into that world of beyond and our mind starts playing tricks on us, that's when it all falls apart. Well, right here, right now, how am I? I'm great.
Absolutely. Profound, mate. That's exactly what I would say. Legend. Friends at home, you heard it here first. Sorry, Gary, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no worries. Much love, and thank you for having me.
Much love to you, mate. Much love to everybody out there. Friends, if you could like and subscribe, boom, 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 that would be wonderful. If you could support us on Locals, that's where we do our uncensored videos, folks, or Patreon for $1.99 a month, or just become a YouTube member. You get access to VIP access to all my events for free. So Bushcraft Weekend, our Christmas get together. You get a monthly Zoom chat where we all support each other for mental health, and we get in there and we have a gossip and a yap about the world, and we work out what works and what doesn't work. And I think I said, could you subscribe? That's it. I've said enough, or I'll be going around in circles. See you all soon.